Hello and welcome to I'm going to play with my face on the screen using my 4-joystick controller in a custom world that was uploaded by anyone else at all is actually the case, but by another player of the game Fly Dangerous. As you can see here, it's called Mountain Circle. And I'm going to, instead of trying to race around the map, I'm just going to skip the first gate. This is my technique with this circle map to allow me to just play it infinitely. So I have my full Newtonian velocity and rotation configuration, which means that I can't store time anyways. And then I'm just going to gently cruise around this map real quick. And I don't know that I will try to race quickly during this video. Generally speaking, if I navigate a few times around it, then I do get a little quicker. But the reality is I don't race ever under any circumstance. I just try to perform little navigational challenges, and then sometimes I do get a little bit better at accelerating or decelerating in a little bit more timely manner. I'm gonna have the music off because I get sick of the music. And you see now the gate is red. What that means is the course will never finish. And I can kind of try to work on my time a little bit. So I just crashed. I didn't hit anything, but I did miss. That means time for grape juice. So I normally want to try to show the controller in the video. That's a special purpose video that I'm trying to make, where somebody can watch the video and then try to view the craft in navigation and then try to view the controller inputs as I put them in. So in this case, I'm trying to show my face. And the reason is because I'm not trying to demonstrate the controller. I'm trying to instead play this map in my style of play, I guess is the correct way to say it. So I've got the full Newtonian thrust and rotation. And you can see that the rotation, because if I just let go, then I get that rotation. You don't want to see an input. So then it just keeps spinning until I put another input. Okay, and then I'm just gonna cruise around this thing. Over and over again. It's basic navigation practice. So basic navigation, you might say, well, but you're memorizing a course. And that's the thing about basic navigation, is an example would be that we basic navigate to work in a car. I don't have a car, I basic navigate on my skateboard. I'm crashing. But I go the same route every day, and I get smoother and faster at traversing that route. Car is a little different than a skateboard because the reasons that you slow down on a skateboard are generally the result of maybe uneven surfaces or cracks in the road or really rough spots or some other kind of, you might stumble hazard. In a car, you generally have neighborhood roads that you're very familiar with and know where to be looking to avoid any oncoming traffic or where there might be people crossing. And then you know which parts of the trip you can just kind of hurry down, you know, along straight drives, or you have stoplights or right and left turns, and you get to know the flow of traffic and you get to know the route. And it's basic navigation. It's not racing. But you get faster and faster. You get more smooth. You get to be a better driver all around. And kind of the theory of the play style here is that it's a similar approach. You're not racing. You're not trying to eke out your very best performance. The objective is instead to just become gradually more familiar, and then you will notice improvements in your performance. And this will apply to new maps. But along with getting better at just having coordination for basic motions, you also can predict the moves that you're going to need just as you would in a race. And the idea here is that a lot of people, and this is what I am, may not want to try to necessarily win. They just want to experience that improvement, that familiarization. And you know, the best times that they do get would be not necessarily here catching a result of them actually trying to race. It's just that there was a series of maneuvers that did work well in their favor, and it was kind of a thing of randomness, but it was not a victory. It might not even be their fastest lap that makes them happy. It would be a particular set of maneuvers, or even only one maneuver going particularly well. So racing is a very technical challenge. And in order to race, you need to learn every detail of the most efficient passage through the course. And you need to practice each detail really independently. You can't just run around the course a bunch of times and then get better. If you do that, you will get better, but really there's only one most efficient specific trajectory of every particular portion of the course, every navigational challenge, so to say. And then you need to figure out exactly the one that's going to be the winning move, and then you need to make sure that you are able to then organize all of these exact winning moves together. That's a lot of work, it's true. And actually, it can be really fun. But the amount of work that it is to race, as it were, is far beyond the scope of most people's available gameplay time. So therefore, what they enjoy is something that doesn't take as much input, so much time, so much preparation. In an environment where, and this is what racing video games do offer often, in an environment where a lot of the work is kind of done naturally, and then maybe the courses are very limited, so that there isn't that much work to do. People can enjoy racing, and they'll probably keep it up for a little while, but they won't keep it up for very long because the workload is too high. So I will argue that a lot of people will fall into the category of the daily driver style of gameplay, where on your daily drive to work, you do have good moves. You get through lights, you move smoothly down neighborhood roads, you expertly position yourself in the parking lot. And a lot of the gameplay enjoyment of video games would be similar. So here what I'm doing is I'm trying to practice fully manual rotation, fully manual thrust. I don't know that these thrust figures and rotation speeds are appropriate for realism perspective at this point. I could have more thrust for the gameplay aspect of it. But I didn't want to give too much thrust because I do kind of want to still maintain the logic where if you're using the same thruster to achieve your thrust and your rotation, you can achieve a very fast rotation long before you could ever achieve a very fast acceleration. The amount of energy that it takes to spin a craft on a sort of point of center of mass is so much lower than the amount of energy that it takes to accelerate that craft, that if you can accelerate to the limit of your input capabilities, then you could rotate to the limit of your ability to even see the screen. I mean, you could accelerate faster than the computer could actually. You would accelerate so quickly in a rotation with that amount of thrust that you could never expect to control the vehicle. You would have to have quite a bit of limitation put on the thruster output. So if the same thruster that was going to cause you to accelerate could burn very low instead of an on and off type of toggle, where if it's on, you're accelerating. So that when you're going to accelerate in a direction, first of all, you need some more thrust on tap, but not that much, but just a little bit more to manage that rotation if it's the same thruster. And then if it's not the same thruster, then your problem is, unless your vehicle is exactly perfectly balanced, your thrusters that cause acceleration in a direction will result in rotation. If you're sitting in a craft and you're not perfectly balanced on the center of mass, and you have a rocket engine that's accelerating the craft in one direction or another, the rotation, the craft is going to start to get a rotation. I mean, and then the way that these ships are laid out with all these components everywhere, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to apply a thrust in any direction without having some kind of stabilization. Crash. Being perfectly balanced physically is a near impossibility. You're going to need to have tuning and stabilization loop, and you're going to have limited output. But at the end of the day, thrusters are going to be like any engine, and there's limits. And that means that if you're going to thrust really hard to accelerate, you're going to really have a hard time controlling that rotation. So my kind of thrust to rotation logic is that rotation should be actually really powerful. And then my thrust is kind of, I didn't want to put too much thrust on there because my logic was, well, I mean, really the rotation should get faster and faster the more thrust that you have on tap. Because if a thruster is like any other kind of engine, there's kind of a minimum output. So even if you're not like flooring that thruster and that thruster is at a lower output, it's still going to be pretty powerful to be on at all. The more powerful it is at regular power, like regular high output, the higher the floor, the output floor is going to be. If you want to raise the ceiling, the floor is going to come with it. That's any engine is going to work that way. And even though in theory you could just put less and less fuel, you end up with the engine just doesn't run smoothly when you do that. Any kind of engine. So a rocket engine that's able to launch a craft into space can never put out as little thrust as the RCS thrusters on that vehicle. There's just no imaginable way to do it. I'm sure that over time, with the advancement of technology, the engineering will improve. And it'll get more and more plausible to get closer and closer, or anyways, lower the floor while raising the ceiling. But at all times, you're going to be able to have a lot more rotation than you really, than what you might want. Whereas you'll never have as much acceleration as you might want. Getting that acceleration takes a huge amount of energy, and getting that rotation takes a very minuscule amount of energy compared. So because of this, I didn't really want to have my vehicle feel, this is just a gameplay opinion, you know, it's not that I think anybody should play the same kind of way. It's just kind of what I was going for when I decided on this thrust value. And then the other thing too is that, you know, this is a little bit more thrust than the game is, the stock game without boost. It's 1.2 instead of 1, but I'm not using boost ever. So because of that, I kind of think like, really the game would be a little bit faster, but you're using boost. The ship would be faster in the base game, Fly Dangerous, if there was no boost. But there is boost, so the ship is actually a little bit slower than the player might want it to be, because you're going to use boost. And then the boost is going to make you a little bit faster than the player might want it to be, but it's boost. And by being on either side of the perfect zone, it's a lot more challenging to get your timings just right as such. I was just trying the Everspace demo. I don't think I want to play that game. They would have to make some pretty big changes. Way too much of an arcade feel, even with flight assist off. Which I think should be changed to velocity assist and rotation assist common terminology. Another thing too is, you know, there's no common terminology in these games. I mean, I really think there should be some common terminology. A lot of people don't know how to describe, I'll call it Newtonian, and it's even worse these days because in the modern era, Newtonian physics is being used as a term in orbital physics and gravity simulation and hard and soft body physics and like car games and stuff like that, where, you know, the tire is going to be swishing under the weight of the car and the energy of the braking. So I do think that there needs to be a single word to describe this. You go and then you let it go, and it goes. When you rotate, you apply inputs, and thrusters go, and it shouldn't be Newtonian. I think Newtonian is a really great word for it. I think that for a long time it should be usable, but I think that there should be called something else, like maybe thrust physics. Because Newtonian is already a very much broader scope in video games. And I think that it's appropriate, because if your orbital mechanics are not Newtonian, well then your game isn't Newtonian. You know, now you might have thrust physics, but you don't have orbital physics. You don't have soft body simulated physics for if you hit the ground, and how much does the ground compact. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that... So even if you use the word Newtonian, there should be yet another word to specify what is having Newtonian physics. And in this case, I think that thrust is a good word for it. Thrust physics. Because I've got accurate descriptor. And I also don't think arcadey is the right word. Arcadey field. Maybe. There needs to be some kind of word for that too. Well, in the interest of not having way too long of a video, probably should end the video, but my hope is that I crashed. See, actually, that's good. I got to show the crash that always happens. I just either hit this, or I think I hit this one too. And I think that I should explode instantly, but I guess. I just wanted to kind of run around this course and enjoy that, and then it's a good course actually. I really like it. And then I kind of wanted to have part of the reason I wanted to make it is that when this course came out, a bunch of people showed their gameplay, and I kind of wanted to kind of have my gameplay as a comparison. So that's what someone else is doing, and that's what someone else is doing, and this is what I'm doing here. So I'm kind of moving like this. This is what it kind of looks like, and you kind of see that I have the Newtonian rotation and the Newtonian thrust, and kind of what that sort of acceleration and deceleration looks like. Benjamin St. John does use the Newtonian thrust, but he uses a lot of it, a lot more power on the thrust. What happens when you have such excessive thrust is that in particularly a shorter style course like this, is it's a lot less likely that you get to the limit, the vehicle's limit of ability to stop before it's too late. So when your thrust is so high, then you can kind of bring the speed down in a much smaller window of time. And the braking effect, I don't want to use the word easier. It's not that it's easier, but it's less time consuming, and it's less of the time that you spend on the track. So what happens is that you can really just accelerate, and then you have so much power on tap that you can just accelerate again to the next place that you're going to go. And there's lots of times when it's not true and you do have to decelerate, but the amount of time you spend on that deceleration is less overall. Whereas with this amount of deceleration, for example, this right here is and I'm sure it's roughly the same. I mean, but it's not that it's a different. It's not that the move is different. The move remains the same. But the planning is a little different. Certainly. Because here I need to accelerate very early. And then you could say, oh yeah, but the acceleration on tap means that then you get up to a speed so that the amount of distance you need to accelerate and decelerate should be the same. And I will say, in theory, that's true. If the course was really spread out, then it would be more true. But on a smaller course like this, you kind of reach a human limitation of tracking and coordinating before you reach the thrust limit of the vehicle. So I kind of feel like it's not really as much of a emphasis on slowing down when you have so much power, because you stop accelerating more often than you need to. You don't really need to decelerate as much. You much more often just stop accelerating. So there is something that you need to do, and you need to stop accelerating at the right time. But then you're getting a lot closer to the sort of regular driving that people do all the time. Because a lot of times in games and in simulators and different vehicles, you stop accelerating and then you begin accelerating again. But it's not as common that you need to specifically decelerate. It does happen. There are times, but it's usually a lot more limited. Cars, for example, if you stop accelerating, you slow down. Any game with friction, it's always usually particularly easier to just time your acceleration release. There's less of an emphasis on how long it takes to hit the brakes. I mean, if you were driving a semi-truck, a semi-truck driver would say, no, I really got to worry about hitting the brakes, and I got to hold them for a long time, and it happens all the time, because every time I get off the highway, it's like that. But I would argue that if you get just more power until it feels perfectly video gamey, then you do kind of take deceleration out a lot more. It's just less a part of the map. And then just letting go of the accelerator gets to be much more common activity. But I have to specifically decelerate quite a bit. And I'm sure that Benjamin St. John is having to do that constantly, particularly being that he's really working his times and mastering the course to achieve a very race-oriented time. But the casual let off the accelerator is a lot more available for more power. I'll just argue that. And that's another thing that I do think about, is that by forcing a much longer distance for deceleration with this particular thrust value, I think it does force a longer deceleration distance. And you spend a lot more time at the max speed that you could achieve in that distance overall. I would say. As a result of it being easier to have a lower speed. Alright. My clock says almost 30 minutes, so I'm going to stop recording. the 4-joystick game controller. Oh, very nice. Thank you very much.